listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. Happy Friday, or maybe it's happy Saturday. We are so happy to have you with us wherever you're joining us from in the world. You are watching stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and this show means so much to me. If you haven't joined us before, I started out with this show after retiring from my corporate work last year, and this was the very first show that I started. It was all in support of the people from the Crohn's Colitis Foundation and the support group that I run, and I wanted people to have a place to come forward. We started with just a phone and Business Talk Radio. We moved to Zoom, then we moved to StreamYard, and now we have 18 to 20 live shows a week. So I'm always so grateful and thankful for the opportunity to be in front of you today. We have an amazing guest, someone who is no stranger to the screen, to media. She is very well known. She also started her own business, went out on her own, and she's here to talk to us about her own adversity that she's overcome, and she's been able to take that into the world and help other people. So that's what this is about, inspiration and hope. Let us welcome the CEO and founder of Kerry Barrett Consulting. That would be Kerry. Welcome.
That's me. Welcome. How are you?
So good to see you. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I love your music. You're open. I found myself like bebopping along behind the scenes. It's got great energy. I'm excited to talk.
Thank you. Thank you. It's funny, when I went through all the different music that you could get licensed and I listened to, I was like, oh, that's it. Now when I hear it, I'll be downstairs and the computer starts with YouTube and I'm like, oh, turn it off.
Oh, no.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Sick of it.
Sick of it. So, Carrie, before we get into your overcoming adversity, you were an anchor on NBC. You were, people would see you on a regular basis and probably just look at you and think, she has it all. There's nothing in her life that needs fixing. She's beautiful. She's intelligent. She's successful. She can communicate at the highest levels. She's won Emmys. But there were some things going on, right, that you had to overcome yourself that people don't even know about.
I mean, it's sort of, I think, maybe one of the only through lines that is consistent in everybody's life. And it sort of relates itself to that old adage, always be kind, because you never know what battle someone is fighting. And I think, it applies not just to your professional life, but your personal life as well. I'll give you a very quick example. I had a lot of trouble getting pregnant with my second child. I had a bunch of miscarriages. And I remember people emailing me when I was pregnant with my second. I was working in Philadelphia at the time and being, I can't believe you're having a second baby. Aren't you a little bit long in the tooth for having a second child? As it turns out, I had 3 and I have my third at the age of 43. But my point is, when I finally was able to talk about the backstory, tons of women came out and said, man, I saw you on TV. I saw you get pregnant the first time. I saw you the second. And I thought it was so easy. I thought everything just sort of came to you. And my point in relaying that story is you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's sort of been a consistent through line for my entire life.
Wow. Well, I have you highlighted. I just want to ask you, how did you feel like being in the public spotlight and then people knowing your personal business and having to answer questions?
I think it's one of those things that certainly I experience it to a much smaller degree than any sort of like household name celebrity, but it did take a little bit of getting used to. And there were times when it was intrusive, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? Well, I'm not, but I just had a miscarriage, and that's why I have a little bit of extra weight on me. Thanks for asking. Once I have an announcement to make, you'll hear it from me. You do begin to get comfortable, though, with putting portions of yourself out there. I've never had a problem mixing personal discussions and business discussions. I think, at least for me anyway, and a large part of what I do is, it's my personal brand. But for me, the two have never been in their own separate silos. There's always been sort of a commingling, and you get, at least I did, more comfortable with it as time goes on.
Kerry, thank you so much for your transparency and sharing all of that. And I'm just wondering, for people who are watching and thinking, oh my gosh, she was, on a major network, so glamorous. It's a lot of hard work, right?
It's a lot of hard work, not so glamorous. There's a lot of days when glamour is the last thing you're thinking about. When I first started out, and I'll share this story with you, I was working in this tiny little town in Texas, Wichita Falls, and, you're doing everything. This is 20 years ago, right? The cameras are giant. You're still actually putting physical tape to edit. And I was out at a police press conference, and it was a small town, but nevertheless, all the media was there, and the police chief and everybody else. And I ran into the station to use the restroom, and I was wearing a skirt. And when I pulled my hose up, I accidentally tucked the back of my skirt into my hose, walked back out into the press conference, had no idea that my full rear was on display. So if there is any notion of glamour, let me diffuse that for you now. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, once again, that you don't always see.
Oh, that's so fun. I mean, I can only imagine. Like, I can feel how you must have
I
felt.
will never forget it. It's like the equivalent of walking out of the bathroom with like 3 yards of toilet paper stuck to your shoe. That sort of thing.
That sort of levels the playing field then, right?
Totally. If you ever were getting a little bit full of yourself, those things knock it right out of you.
So, Kerry, did you always have dreams of being on the network? What were your dreams as a young girl?
No. So the funny thing I moved all over when I was younger. I lived overseas. And I've always been interested in people's stories. I love the idea when I travel, not just seeing sort of the touristy destinations, but really sort of understanding, or trying to get an understanding of the countries in which I'm visiting, the people, the culture. And so that's always been interesting to me. However, I used to be terrified, not just terrified, terrible, but terrified primarily of public speaking. And I don't mean a normal, I don't really want to get up in front of people and talk, but I can muddle through. I mean, like a back of the room, puddle of your own vomit, probably in the fetal position, certainly hyperventilating, fear of public speaking. And so what I wanted to do when I was thinking about my career goals and aspirations is I wanted to become a veterinarian. Specifically, I wanted to work with horses, and I wanted to work with animals because maybe I wouldn't have to talk to the people so much. However, once I started pre-veterinary medicine and I had my first real taste of chemistry, I realized there was only one thing that I got along with worse than public speaking, and that was chemistry. So the pre-vet veterinarian route was not one that's going to happen for me. I took 1.5 years off of college. Certainly nobody thought I was ever going back. And my school at the time had started, Clemson, that's where I went to undergrad, and they had started up a new communications program. And it was very broad. It was speech pathology and some journalism and marketing and PR and business comms and the whole 9 yards. And I thought, well, surely I can find something that I can use to make money, have a career with in this broad spectrum of possibility. And there's no chemistry. And I'm going to have to take a public speaking class, 2 of them, as a matter of fact. So maybe I will begin to get a handle on this crippling and debilitating fear I have of public speaking. I decided to get an internship at a local TV station because I was loading up my course load and trying to make up for lost time, and I could jam an internship in on the weekends. Fell in love with it, and then I really had to figure out how I was going to move from this place of, absolute terror to being able to get up on camera and deliver a live broadcast. And there were certainly a lot of steps and a lot of sucker punches on the way from point A to point B, but I did eventually make it there, which I think is the end goal.
Well, congratulations on that. Do you remember the first broadcast that you did?
Oh God, yeah. So it's funny. It was not funny at the time, but looking back in hindsight, one of the first stories that I went on as an intern, and I was an intern at WYFF. It's the NBC affiliate in Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina. And the reporter that I was working with was doing a story on a blood drive, right? So the community was dangerously low in blood donations. They were having mobile units, and she was highlighting it and telling people where they could go and how they could sign up to donate, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as it so happens, the very first story that I had to cover at my first job in Wichita Falls, Texas, was a blood drive. And I thought, I mean, I was nervous as heck, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I have this down. It's going to be exactly like what I saw Tracy do, which was the reporter I was working with at my internship. It's going to be exactly like what I saw Tracy do, and I'm just going to basically do her live shot verbatim. Except her live shot started out with the words, "As you can see, it's really busy and the parking lot is filling up," because it was. Where I was, there was not a single car, but I was so scared. It's the only thing that I could think of to say. So I gestured. You know what? I probably didn't even gesture. I was probably too scared to turn away from the camera. As you can see, staring terrified into the camera lens, the parking lot is filling up. And I can only imagine everybody being like, the parking lot's filling up. There's nobody there. Really, the right thing would have been to say, we're dangerously low in blood. There's nobody out here yet. It's a great time to come because you're not going to wait in line and you're going to do your community a service. But I was so scared in that moment that all I could think of was what I had sort of preset as how this was all going to happen. And as we all know, when you make assumptions, what do? They make it out of you and me. And so I had to learn how to be able to go with the flow. And I think that has been not only in my broadcast career, but in my life and certainly in my business now, the ability to go with the flow and understand quickly when you need to pivot and your plan has gone astray. And that has served me across the board.
So it sounds like the broadcasting journey had a lot of life lessons for you as well.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I would say one of the things that I always struggled with is it's the fact that when you are putting yourself out there, right? There are always going to be trolls that, you know, come out of the woodwork and are willing to say they're keyboard warriors, except they're all hidden. That was always something that was incredibly difficult for me. I never grew perhaps skin quite thick enough to deal with some of those comments. However, in the beginning, they were debilitating. They were crushing. They would leave me down for days, some of them. In the end, yeah, they would set me back a few steps, but then I could sort of think or feel my way out of them and realize that, you know, this is going to be part and parcel of anybody who's looking to do something that puts themselves out there, of anybody who's looking to grow, of anybody who's looking to do something big, whatever big means for you. It means different things for all of us. There are going to be people out there who are going to want to take you down, is maybe not quite the right word, but they're going to want to challenge you, or they're going to want to, they feel perhaps upset that they're not doing something big that they've dreamt of doing for a while. And so understanding that all of that stuff, unless you're a real jerk, it's never about you. It's never about you. It's always about them. And putting that into perspective, although it's much easier said than done.
I love what you're saying, and I thank you for sharing that. And I'm shaking my head over here because, you know, I've just been doing this since last year, since August, and I've hired a company now, marketing and PR. And so I have been so upset if somebody unsubscribed from my newsletter, or if people are writing comments that are completely inappropriate and unnecessary, and it would take me down. And so now I kind of just, I try to take the emotion out of it and just realize there will always be people out there who are haters, and that's on them. That's what they chose. One person unsubscribed from my newsletter, and I told my sister, and she's like, "That's not about you, Jackie. That's about them. Just let it go." So anyway, thanks for.
You're 100% right. Although you're in the moment, and you're like, "What did I do wrong? Did I offend them? Am I stupid?" It's like part of it is like that imposter syndrome. At least it is for me.
Yes.
That rears its head pretty much every day, and I have to talk myself off the ledge. I look at a client, and a client emails me, "Kerry, we need to talk," and I'm immediately, I'm getting fired. I'm getting fired. It's never been that. I'm sure it'll come. I haven't been in business that long. I'm sure I will get fired at this point. But it's always been, I'd like to do more. Yet somehow I found a way to turn it all into a catastrophic situation in which I've been found out. I really don't know what I'm talking about. And they know that I used to be terrified to get in front of people on the camera, and I didn't always, have whatever this is together. And I don't really know how to run a business yet. And they probably figured that out too. Never been what it is. And by the way, I don't know how to run a business yet.
But by the way, I am still laughing again. Thank you. So our first segment is now over, about overcoming adversity. And I'd love to, before we go to the break, I'd love for you to share your Emmy. I'm assuming that's what that is. I have my glasses on. Is that your Emmy? One of your Emmys there?
This is one of my Emmys here. There's a few more. I don't put them all out. In fact, I used to not have this one here until my marketing agency said, "You fool, you need to put
Yes.
So this is actually an Emmy Award for breaking news coverage. I got back in 2016.
Wait. Before you put it away, can you bring it out again? So I'd love to I've never actually seen one this close. So can you just walk us through like the different parts of the actual trophy, the award?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so this is sort of embarrassing. My children have played with this, and you can see they dropped it on its head a number of times. And so the atlas here is all sort of cattywampus, and I need to get it repaired. But it says the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, right? So NATAS is what it's called. And this is the 2016 New York Emmy Awards, breaking news. I don't know how much of that you'll be able to see where it actually goes into focus. And
yeah.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
And it's the Tribeca crane collapse. Kerry Barrett, anchor, February 5th, 2016. And then on the bottom, it just has sort of like the Emmy statuette is the property of all, and rights are, blah, blah, blah. It's a fine print.
Wow, that's so exciting.
Thank you. I have a Telly Award that is on its way here for a digital show that I do called Wheelhouse, which is all about women who are using their life experiences, very often some sort of trauma, and they're taking that experience and they're using it to create change and growth for other people who find themselves in a similar situation. So it's women who have started businesses or foundations as a way to combat domestic violence or sexual assault. It is women who have struggled with, getting pregnant and have developed techniques for aiding and assisting in fertility. I mean, it's personal, it's professional, it runs across the board, but we just won a Telly Award for that, for Best Educational Series.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, that one I will put up here. That show I'm really proud of.
You should, absolutely. So before we go to the break, I just want to ask you, why did you leave it to go out on your own?
That was a long time coming. I got frustrated with this. This is a longer story, but I got frustrated with TV news not that far into my career. I was probably about 3 years in. I was working, maybe 4 at this point, working in Salt Lake City, Utah. Nothing indicative or specific to that particular area. It's just when I realized that TV news has its limitations, and the limitations for me were, well, number one, I'm getting up at 1:30 in the morning for the morning show. I love morning TV. I love the format. That gets to be a real grind, especially when your husband travels a lot or your partner and you've got 3 kids, which I do. And I got frustrated with the lack of storytelling or the lack of context. There's there were 5 shootings at bodegas last night. Why did we pick this particular one? We picked it because it's the one we happen to be closest to, or that we heard on the scanner. Oftentimes there's not much more rhyme or reason than that. And that incident is certainly important in all of those communities, but what's the context? So I started to get really frustrated with that. And every time I considered leaving, a better opportunity, I don't want to say better, a bigger opportunity came down the road. So, I went from reporting and anchoring to being the, primary anchor in the evenings, or a larger market called, or a better position opened up. And I found myself sort of getting sucked along because a newsroom's a great place to be. It's filled with witty, sharp, funny, diverse people who expand your horizons. It's pulsating with energy. And I loved that. But I was 19 years in when I had well outlived my invitation to stay in the business. And so I left. And when I was figuring out what it was that I wanted to do, because I never thought I'd own a business for sure, I was talking to a woman, I was networking, and she said, you shouldn't go back into the corporate world. You should start your own thing and like take everything you learned and help people use it, and help people, use those skills to grow their own brands and businesses. And I was like, you're right. That's what I'm going to do. Not knowing, the first thing about business, not only had I not reported on it, I'd never read a business book, I'd never taken a business class. So I had actually decided I was so uninterested in business, I was never going to focus. So I had a lot to learn, and I still do, which is one of the things I love about it. It's a new challenge every day. I wake up excited to go to work, and I have to be honest, it had been a long time since I felt that way.
I love your passion and your energy. And I also love the fact that you touched on something that is so important. I'm a huge Shark Tank fan, and I watch the show on a regular basis. And Mr. Wonderful will say, that's not a business, it's a hobby. Yeah. And so I know even with myself, I've had a hobby for the longest time until I found people to show me how to actually make it into a business, how to actually monetize what you're doing. Yeah. But before that, I wasted so much money hiring the wrong people, doing the wrong things. And so I'm so glad that you brought that to light, because if you're out there and you just started a business, at some point you have to monetize it. And that means that you're going to probably need direction and guidance from a mentor or people who actually have done it. So there's a lot of charlatans out there. I hate to say it. So,
you know what? And I don't know that I've ever hired a charlatan, but I have made bad choices. I have made choices for people who I thought could help me. And as it turns out, you have no idea what it is that I do. And it doesn't matter. They're never going to get the business plan or the business model. That I didn't fully appreciate until I was probably like you, thousands of dollars, flushed down the drain. And I looked at my, P&L, which I only learned what was 9 months in. I'm like, no, what's that? And I'm like, that's funny. I have gotten no return on any of this money I've spent. I should probably change that. Not only is this just a hobby, it's also now a money pit. And that's not what it's supposed to be. There's a lot of mistakes, and I know I'll continue to make them, but I finally feel like I'm in a spot where I understand who I am, what I'm doing, and where I want to go.
I love that. I could stay here and talk to you all day. We have to take a break, but I'd also like to, on another show, I'd like to talk about true news versus fake news, because you have a great perspective on that, I'm sure.
That needs to be a long show.
Very long. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from Diane Floyd Boehm about her books that she's authored, and then we're going to hear from Madeline Chan from a music video that she has released. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Kerry Barrett.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, Diane Boehm. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Diane Floyd Boehm tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diane's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diane's Little Girl in the Moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter. Its powerful theme that we're each of us different, yet all of us the same, plants a seed in children that promises to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diane's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diane's delightful books and much more at dianefloydboehm.com. Visit dianefloydboehm.com. That's dianefloydboehm.com.
What you giving me is just not enough. I need a love to take me higher and higher and higher. Every step I take, I feel more awake. Getting closer now, I feel so alive. Stopping me, this is how I live. Ever closer now. Just follow love. Love will take you there. Just follow love. Follow me. Just follow love. Love will take you there. Just follow love. Follow me. Follow love.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back to USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. You are watching stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. My guest today is the lovely, the talented, the beautiful Kerry Barrett, who is CEO and founder of Kerry Barrett Consulting. In our first segment, we heard about her overwhelming fear of public speaking and how she was able to surmount that and become a major news network anchor on NBC. She is the proud recipient and well-deserved earning numerous Emmys, and she has a Telly Award that's coming. So thank you so much for being here, Kerry.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's funny. I listen. Thank you for that introduction, by the way. I should
You're welcome.
hang out with you more often. It is interesting when I think back. It's so easy to sometimes to get sucked into our failures and ruminate on them more than it is our successes. I was thinking, as you were saying, she overcame this, fear of public speaking. I realized it was not necessarily ever in like the perfection, because I sure as heck never had a perfect show or a perfect video or anything perfect for that matter. But I think where the change happened for me, and I imagine it is probably likely for many of those that are listening or watching, is that it's when you realize you can handle what comes your way, whatever's thrown at you, whatever environment it is. For me in the news business, that the information was wrong, or the video went to black, or the microphone cut out, or it's a breaking news situation and we don't have a lot of information. It may not be pretty, but realizing that you can come out on the other side standing, that's sort of where that confidence grows and where that real change happens. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like that's been applicable and sort of a through line throughout my personal and professional life.
Yes, I would have to agree with you. And as I mentioned, it's just so inspirational that you're able to share all of this because, again, perception, beautiful, intelligent, no issues in life. And meanwhile, I could just imagine you in the newsroom, like things just happen, right? And you're there, you're waiting to break a story. There's no story or the teleprompter, whatever, you have your notes, whatever happens, things just happen and you just have to roll with it.
Yeah, well, for the longest time, I was afraid to cover breaking news. I mean, I would sit at the anchor desk and it could be the most benign story. It takes, 15 seconds of ad-libbing and we have a video picture. And I would always hand it off to my co-anchor. You do that, you do that, you do that. And finally, one day I realized, what are you doing? Like, you're always giving the opportunity to someone else. If it's your opportunity, take it, because you're never going to gain the skills or the muscles you need to capitalize on it or leverage it or use it or become better until you actually do it. You can study it all day long, but boy, you got to get in there and make it happen for the real change to occur.
And what an incredible gem, one of the gems for people to take away from today. So as we move into the last part of our show, I'd really like to focus, if it's okay with you, on this whole aspect of women in business and really shifting from, I'm not using pivot, shifting from something that you are so well known for and then going out on your own and that whole piece of exploration where everything is new and exciting, but also unknown, where you have to rely on other people that you trust. So for people out there watching, thinking about leaving something that they've been doing, what would you say to them? What are some brilliant tips that you can share based on your experience?
Boy, I'll tell you what, again, overcoming risk, taking challenge and taking on adversity, again, sort of the through line of all of this. When I tell you that I knew nothing about business and was like anti me ever being a business owner, didn't even cross my mind. The fact that I'm sitting here where I am now, about 2 years later, is still mind-blowing to me. And I did have to take a leap of faith. I had to figure out who I needed to put around me in order to help me through that. It started with networking. And believe it or not, there is a little bit of a facade that goes up when you are on camera, right? So I'm sort of, I don't want to say playing this role, but now I'm going out not as a representative of NBC. I'm going out as a representative of myself. And who the heck am I? And I have to make a whole new network of people now who understand and know me as a business owner and as a media trainer and as a course creator and that sort of stuff. And so finding the right people to put around you, realizing when you've made a mistake and you need to cut bait is also just as important. And I would say 2 other keys for me, with as little knowledge as I had, was I had to just take a step each day. I'm the sort of person who likes to analyze everything. The problem with that is, yeah, you get some great, self-awareness and knowledge, but unless you actually start doing something with it, you are stagnant. And so I knew that I had to put myself out there. And so my strategy in the beginning, before I knew what it was that I was actually going to do, was I'm just going to speak. I'm going to speak in front of anyone and everybody who invites me. And some of them were fruitless, and some of them were fruitful, and some of them just gave me some great social media posts. But always taking a step, putting one step ahead of where you were the day prior is sometimes all that you can manage to do. And that's okay as long as you do it. The second step that I would say, or the second thing that I wish I would have recognized prior to starting my own business, is that I wish I would have created a runway for myself. I wish I would have started networking and seeing what my opportunities were that were beyond the news realm, probably years and years ago, when I first started to become sort of dissatisfied and feel stagnant. And I don't regret any of my news jumps. I don't regret any of my jobs. I learned something in all of them, and I made amazing friends and met just superb people. That said, building a runway and putting one foot in front of the other every day, even if it's just one step. Don't lose momentum.
So well said. Thank you so much. I'm wondering also if you can share with our audience, can you think back over to the 2 years? Was there a moment, and if so, when you said to yourself, I've got something here?
I don't know. I think there were a few moments, and I will tell you that even in 2 years, going through the pandemic and everything else, there have been some shifts. I too will avoid saying the P word. There have been some shifts, some of them pandemic related, and some of them just realizing that what I thought my clients wanted or needed, or potential clients wanted or needed, was not actually what they did want or need. And so listening became a key part of understanding where I needed to build upon my skills, what part of my skills I could use. And I think a couple of things happened for me. Number one, I jumped into the digital course world, not only as a consumer, but also as a creator. I realized in the pandemic that there were a lot of people who needed to create video content, right? It's the easiest. It's, that one-to-many sort of ability to scale your visibility and your credibility. But it is, like speaking from a stage, but on steroids, because it works 365, 24/7, the whole 9 yards. And so I realized that there were people who were in a tight sort of budget. They don't have a production crew. They don't have a $10 or $15 or $20,000 monthly budget for full video production, which I do also. But they needed to be able to figure out how to create marketing video with their phones. You know what, Carrie? You know how to do that. That's a big part of news right now. Messaging, presentation, shooting, editing, how to deliver, whether you need a prompter, whether you should be ad-libbing. Why don't you bundle all of that together and create something that small business owners can really use to help grow their business? And when I did a couple of surveys and a couple of posts, and I got a overwhelming response. And that was sort of that first moment when I thought, okay, I need to hone in on this. Now I need to create some group coaching programs that are based on that, but allow me to be in front of people, in a sort of virtual environment where we can have Q&As. And it was sort of taking that seed and then just building upon it, but building upon it, not willy-nilly, building upon it by asking people what they wanted, listening to what they said, and then taking my skills and finding a way to use them to help them with their problems, right? It's that old saying, like, nobody needs a drill. They need the hole that the drill makes. Nobody needs a media trainer. They need what the media trainer can do for them, right? So figuring out that it wasn't necessarily me they needed, but a problem that I could help them fix in terms of their visibility and their credibility and the way that they were scaling it. Sort of taking yourself out of the equation.
Brilliant. Thank you. I love how you just sort of peeled that all back for us to make it simple to understand. Thank you. I'm wondering how during this pandemic, Clubhouse, for example, I know you're on Clubhouse, but how has social media impacted your business? And if it has, in what way?
Yeah, well, I am on Clubhouse, although not nearly as much as I should be. So I'm actually going through a rebrand right now, and I am putting all of my digital courses and my group coaching and my Clubhouse and my social channels under something called the VIQ Project, the Video IQ Project. Right now, my Instagram handle, as you see it on the screen, is still at Kerry Barrett, but that's all about to change. And social has become such a great way to connect with people around you. There's a couple of things that people generally miss, right? That's one of the areas I wish I would have established more of a runway than I have before I left the news business. But the way that people use social now is it can't be all about selling. You can't just sell. You have to provide some knowledge. You have to provide some value. Maybe there's every Tuesday you highlight a client and one of your clients wins as it relates to their business or something you help them with. So it's sort of a twofer. Social selling is huge, but it's much more than about just posting something and leaving it there. It's about engaging. It's about understanding, I hate to say it, but understanding how the algorithms work. And so you can get your content in front of people who will not only reach out to you, but before that even, find it useful and find it helpful. Social media and social selling is growing like gangbusters. Here's the fine print. You don't own any of those platforms. I don't own Instagram. They could decide to block me or change the algorithm any old day. The Facebook could use its licensing, and then Facebook goes away, right? You don't own any of those. You're renting space on them. The true way to grow socially, in my opinion, is by building your email list, right? Nurturing your clients, because that you own. People can unsubscribe, sure, but unless you lose your contacts, never to be found again, you own all of that. And so that is, beyond even social, the better way to get your message out, the better way to continue to grow, and the better way to bring value and nurture your potential clients and your current clients.
Yay, I love that. Any insights you can give us about how to grow the email list?
So when I do a speaking engagement, I usually ask for a couple of things. Number one, if it's not a paid engagement, I need to be able to do a couple of things. Number one, I need to be able to get the emails of the people who are in attendance, not because I'm going to spam them, but because I want to be able to reach out to them. I oftentimes will offer a free 30-minute strategy session with the attendees of an event. So I have a way of connecting with them. I can walk them through some problems. We can see if there's something that is worth exploring a more complete engagement with. And then when I get those emails, I try and bring them over on my social as well. So I'm growing both of those platforms, but really it's hey, if you're, reading this email, I have a class that's coming up. If you follow me on Instagram, you can enter to win a free month of group coaching, or you can enter to win a free 60-minute strategy session. So growing both of those platforms, but I always ask for the email list. I always ask for the opportunity to provide an additional offer. There's no, I'm not going to shove it down your throats, but let me at least offer a 30-minute strategy session so that I can connect with people that way. Those have been my two primary ways of growing my email list, aside from creating contests and giveaways and that sort of thing.
Excellent tips. Thank you. As you were speaking, two things came to mind. I thought, are you going to be on Breakfast with Champions over at Clubhouse, or you should be there if you're not?
I should be there. I'm not there. Clubhouse is one of those things that's really hard for me because, boy, I start to listen and I'm like sucked in. So I have to find a way where I can strategically give myself some time to listen and pay attention, because if you're anything like me, although we think we can multitask, if I'm trying to listen to Clubhouse and do something else, inevitably one of them gets the short shrift, and I cannot do two things at one time. So no, but I do need to be there.
You definitely need to be there. You should be on that stage. Yes. And my second question is, any plans for you in the future to teach film, teach the art of being a journalist, a reporter, an anchor? Because I think that's something that's really needed as well.
Thank you for mentioning that. I do. I was an adjunct professor at Kane University where I taught public speaking, and we looked a good deal into, because virtual, I was in person for a while and then the pandemic. So public speaking now for a lot of people doesn't mean you're on a stage. It means that you're on a camera. So we were able to bring in some of those elements of on-camera presentation and messaging to the public speaking class. I actually right now have a couple of station groups that I do consulting with. So for their on-air talent, their reporters and their anchors, we do several consulting sessions a year where we go over performance, and we offer, I offer suggestions, tips, strategies, and we practice together. And then I actually have a media group as well where I'm doing a group coaching. Their reporters, all of them are virtual, and I work with them on understanding how to interview, understanding how to be interviewed, the difference between being live in a studio and delivering an interview, in a situation such as this where everything is virtual. So yes, I have. I'd like to dive more into it. It's on the to-do list. It's just one of those things that I haven't been able to give 100% yet to. Shame
on me for coming up with more things for you to do.
Gosh darn it, Dr. Jackie. What the heck? No, I'm writing it on my to-do list now. No, you're right. It's one of those things that makes perfect sense. I just, I haven't taken a dive into it. And I will say this, it's really challenging right now because the TV news industry is an industry, unfortunately, in a state of decline. And it has been for a long time, between the advent of the internet, which the TV news industry was very sloppy getting its arms around, and now social media, people are curating their own news feeds on their phone, which is good and bad. We have a tendency to surround ourselves in our own echo chambers when we do that. And so we're not as exposed to different ideas and different trains of thought. That said, we can also pick and choose the news that interests us. That has not been a good thing for traditional media. And so one of the hard things right now, what everybody is pulling back is, where is the budget? And so that's one of those, maybe it'll change a little bit after the pandemic. Viewership is at an all-time high, but unfortunately, a lot of advertisers pulled their dollars at the start of the pandemic because they didn't have the revenue coming in. So despite record high viewership, it's still an industry that's struggling right now.
Yes, thank you for sharing that and just bringing it to light, because people have certain perspectives about industries, right? And they think, oh, everybody's watching television, or everyone's watching Netflix, or everyone's on social media. Meanwhile, everything is struggling pretty much, right? As people are trying to get the new normal.
Exactly. I mean, it really is. And nobody exactly knows what that's going to be. It wasn't that long ago before the Today Show and Today in New York started a morning Instagram show, an Instagram TV show. And Listen Up and Tune In are the names of the two shows. And it was an effort. It is an effort. And it's successful on getting their arms around that sort of Instagram audience, which is generally a younger demographic than those who are watching TV news, traditional TV news on your NBCs, ABCs, CBS, Fox News, that sort of thing. And so the challenge there is when the millennials now are, they're sort of like the youngest generation that's watching TV news regularly. And so when they are, a little further down the line, who's coming in to replace them? And nobody's really figured out how to grab that younger audience. And I think it does apply to social. Think about Facebook. Facebook came out on the scene in a big way anyway, in about 2008. Well, there's nobody young that's on Facebook anymore,
right. Right.
I'm on Facebook, but I'm not young. And so even social media begins to fade out as new generation. Right now it's TikTok and it's Snapchat was hot for a while. You get the idea. I don't need to go on, but
yes,
it is constantly changing, and it will be the challenge for centuries to come, how we communicate and where we get our messages and our news.
And I think something very important to take from that is that when you are communicating, it needs to be effective. You need to be a great listener. And I want to close out with how you work with your clients and who should be reaching out to you. But before we do, would you give our audience just one or two little gems on the art of being interviewed? So when you're going to be interviewed, what should you do in advance to prepare?
Yeah, one thing, and it depends a little bit on the interviewee or interviewer rather, and what it is that you're talking about. First and foremost, never get defensive, no matter what. It just calmly state the facts. If you go on defense, you have already lost. So if you are asked a question, say your company is in some sort of controversy, why does your company XYZ suck so bad? You don't say my company XYZ doesn't suck because I'll tell you what, that's the soundbite that's going to get the play, and you don't sound good in it. So never go on the defense. The other thing I think that is easy to forget is TV is not just about, and video and any really sort of media, it's not just about a data dump. People are looking to connect with you. And so you want to avoid what I like to call the uns, right? And if you want a little more information about them, you can find it on my website or reach out. I have a download tool about avoiding the uns. The uns are those things that we don't think about when we are creating content or being interviewed or we're on TV. It's not about the messaging. It's not about any of that. It's about the performance mindset and thinking about what it is that makes somebody want to hang on to every word that you say. You could have the most boring information, but if you can deliver it in a compelling way, people will stick around to watch. The ShamWow guy, he talked about a cloth for 30 minutes, but people would stick around to the end of it because his delivery was so outrageous. So the uns, the ones that you need to avoid: unfriendly, unrelatable, uncompelling, unexciting, and uninteresting. How do you avoid all of those? Well, that's where sort of the secret sauce is.
And is that part of how you work with your clients? Do you help them to get rid of the uns?
So it's a couple of ways that I work with my clients, and it sort of depends on it does depend on what their needs are. When I'm working with a higher level or a C-level executive, oftentimes they want media training because they want to scale their visibility and their credibility through the mainstream media. They want to be a contributor on MSNBC, or they want to talk finance on Fox Business. So explaining to them or working with them on interviewing practices, being on camera, understanding how to be compelling. Yes, the uns are part of it, but media training is a bigger process than that. There's also, right, that applies to small business owners as well, where I find that my smaller clients, and by smaller, I mean small business owners, entrepreneurs, perhaps even startups, they need to create video, and they need to create it oftentimes on a budget. So some of them will want to work with me one-on-one for one of my programs. More often, though, they'll want to work with me in one of my group coaching programs, or they'll want to take my digital course. And then if they want to dive a little bit further into having one-on-ones, they'll do it that way. But it's about delivery. It is about presentation. It's about understanding that when you're on camera, it's not just about delivering the words. It's about the performance. I feel a little bit reticent about using that word because it sounds inauthentic. And I know authenticity is another one of those buzzwords that's probably making all of us want to barf at this point, but it is important. So how do you take that performance and turn it into something that is authentic and real? When you think about speaking from a stage in an auditorium in front of thousands of people, you probably understand that that's a very different style of speaking than if you're sitting 3 feet across the table with somebody at a conference room. It's the same concept. It's just you go about it in a slightly different way when you're on camera versus being on a stage.
Wow, I am blown away by all of this incredible information that you have shared today. Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
I'm having so much fun, and it's so nice to have a legend here like you that's not only of what you've already accomplished, but the fact that you walked away from it and you started something on your own. And no, it didn't come 1, 2, 3. People might think, oh, okay, well, she'll just go to her network of all the people. No, you shared that you had to go and have a new network, and you really had to start over and have your own credibility in what you're doing today, and you're a success at it. So many plus points that you shared today to inspire people. You are the perfect person for overcoming adversity and inspiring hope. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate this. You're a great interviewer, and this was a blast.
Thank you so much. I'd love to have you answer as we close out 2 things. 1, what would you like our audience to take away from this interview today? And 2, how do people reach you?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, the easy part first. I think the best way to find me right now is through my website, which is Kerry Barrett Consulting, Kerry Barrett, Barrett consulting.com. My first name's spelled a little differently, so I appreciate you running it along the bottom of your screen. Also Instagram at Kerry Barrett. And I think in terms of the takeaway, when it comes to adversity, and boy, I'll tell you what, I deal with this every day, and it doesn't ever fully go away. At least it hasn't for me yet. Understanding that we we really are going through our own battles. And because you feel like you are not qualified, or you don't know which step is the right step, or that you feel overwhelmed, it's the same thing I advise my clients who are just beginning to get into the video creation and production mode. Holy cow, I can't stand myself on camera. I loathe it. Okay, well, don't do it all at once. Start with a little baby step. Sit down in front of your computer, open up a Zoom room or whatever it is that you use, and talk for 3 minutes and leave it at that. And then go back a few days later and watch. Pick out one thing that you want to work on and then work on that. Maybe it's eye contact. Okay, so then you open up the Zoom room again, you say the same stuff, but this time you work on eye contact. When you feel like you've begun to master that, then move on to the next thing. All of that to say, momentum is important, but if you try and do all of the things, you will do none of the things. It's too much. One step at a time, one toe in the water a day, and just keep putting one foot after the next. And how many more cliches can I wrap into that sentence? If you give me some more time, I can probably find some.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think it's take action, but don't try to do everything at one time, because you're just going to fail, and then you're going to be disappointed. You're going to go back to inactivity probably.
You're going to fail. You're going to go back to inactivity, and what happens to me when that, and because I make that mistake all the time, is that my head starts to go, oh, you can't do this. You failed at this thing again, and it's so easy to get into a bad space in your mind when you're doing that. So one step at a time, one day at a time. It's the simplest, easiest advice, but it is oftentimes the hardest one to commit to.
You are just amazing. I am so happy that you're here today. I would love to stay with you. I have another show after this. Otherwise, I would just keep going. But I love your energy. I love the fact that you have so much experience, and you're so transparent with what you've gone through, and you're so likable. You see somebody in network anchor, it's like, oh, I can't talk to them. I'm not sure what this, like you're just a regular person who's just accomplished quite a lot.
I got my slippers on, right?
I love it. I'm wearing sweat socks.
There you go. That's perfect. We're one and the same.
Well, I wish you a beautiful weekend. And for those who joined late, please go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV. You can watch this from the very beginning. Carrie, an absolute pleasure. You mentioned you're coming on some of our other shows.
I am. We've got another one. I don't think it's scheduled till December, but I know we've got one on the books. Okay, perfect. It's probably the business talk show with Alcini. Yes, excellent. Oh, we do have a comment here from our friend in the UK, Anthony Giannopoulos. So valuable information. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. All right, Carrie, I will let you go. Have a beautiful weekend. Thank you again for being here. It's an absolute pleasure meeting you. Oh, and you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, wasn't she a delight? I love when we have people come on the show and they're ready to share and they're so passionate about what they're doing. And she's obviously very successful. She didn't have to be here today, and yet she was. And not only was she here, she was so forthcoming with so much information of value. I don't care if you're in business, you're not in business, whatever your situation is, she gave us real value in terms of life lessons that can be applied in business as well. So please do reach out to her. I know she can help you with your business. She can help you get yourself out there. It seems scary. It's overwhelming. Every time I broadcast, I'm literally sweating. I'm not kidding you. I have a towel over here that I'll start wiping off, like, oh, my Botox, I need to have a like, it's okay. You're just a regular person. I'm a regular person. My neck is red. Who cares? Just get out there and do it. So that being said, I thank you all for being here. It's been a beautiful week of broadcasting. I think we had 19 shows this week. I have one more coming up, which is the Listening Mentor, which is me giving you 8 minutes of tips on how to have better relationships through the power of listening. All right. Thank you again for being here. Thank you, Carrie. Everybody stay with us. Coming right up in a few minutes, looking for closing credits. Okay. Bye.